I found out the man I loved wasn't who he said he was. At first, I thought I was paranoid, until I learned why his family never spoke about his past. Now I sleep with the guilt of every woman he hurt after me. He was too perfect. That should have been my first clue. Every gesture landed. Every answer was just vague enough to feel mysterious, just detailed enough to sound real. He brought me flowers I actually liked, remembered details I hadn't meant to share, like the way I hated ice in my water or how I always sat facing the door at restaurants. He called when he said he would, texted good morning, asked about my day. He never love-bombed, just slowly made himself necessary. Essential, safe. I met him at a bookstore, of course I did. He was holding a copy of The Stranger, and I made some throwaway comment about Camus being everyone's favorite philosopher when they're hiding something. He laughed, but didn't disagree. That was his thing. He never disagreed. He didn't argue, didn't push, just absorbed. I told my best friend Jess, he listens better than anyone I've ever met. She said, so he's either perfect or practiced. I laughed, told her to shut up. But the line stayed with me longer than I admitted. We dated quietly, no social media. He said he wasn't a share everything online guy. I didn't care. It felt private, sacred. Ours. When I finally met his family, it was casual. A dinner, wine, candlelight. His mom said I had kind eyes. His sister smiled once, maybe twice. His father barely looked at me. I thought they were reserved. Now I know better. But back then, I believed what he told me. They're just not expressive, but they like you, I can tell. I nodded because I wanted to believe it. And because everything else felt so perfect, I told myself I didn't need to ask what they weren't saying. His family liked me. But they were cold, not rude, just distant. Stiff. Like they were sitting through something they'd done before, something expected. Like they'd practiced pleasantries in the car on the way over. His mother offered wine and compliments. You dress simply. That's good. His sister asked what I did for work, then immediately checked her phone. His father stood behind his chair the whole time, one hand on the backrest, the other in his pocket, saying almost nothing. And when I asked Nathan, because that's what I knew him as, Nathan Wells, about his childhood, about family vacations or what he was like in school, the entire room shifted. His mother went still. His father excused himself to the bathroom, even though we were barely 10 minutes into the meal. His sister refilled her own wine, said nothing. Nathan touched my knee under the table and said, "Let's not get into all that. It's not really dinner talk." His mom gave a small smile. He's better now. Better? I didn't know what to do with that word. It hung there, unanswered. I asked him about it later in the car. He kissed the side of my head and said, "They're just weird. That's why I don't talk to them much." I believed him, because I'd been taught to excuse quiet tension, to fill in blanks with the best possible version, to respect boundaries I didn't understand. And because when he looked at me, it felt like I was the only person in the world he ever let all the way in. He said the past didn't matter. It was a few weeks after that dinner. We were lying on the couch, a documentary humming in the background. I asked again, softly this time, about his childhood. "What were you like at 10?" I said. "What kind of kid were you?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Angry, probably," he said. "Quiet, I don't really remember." I waited, he didn't continue. So I said, "No embarrassing stories, no weird middle school haircut." He kissed my forehead. "Some things are better left where they belong." I let it go. I told myself it was a boundary, that not everyone wants to unbox old wounds, that maybe whatever he'd gone through wasn't mine to dig up. He was here now, with me. Good to me, that was enough, or it should have been. Still, I noticed how carefully he edited himself, how no one ever tagged him in old photos, how his Facebook had been wiped clean beyond 2 years, how he deflected every story about growing up with vague phrases like small-town life or nothing interesting. He gave me the present version, polished, measured, enough to fall in love with, and I did. God help me, I did. Because love makes you complicit. It turns questions into threats, doubt into betrayal, and I didn't want to betray him, not yet. Then that girl went missing. I saw the headline while scrolling late one night. Local news. No big coverage yet. Just a photo, blonde, pale, mid-20s. Last seen leaving a coffee shop near the river trail. She looked like me, not exactly, but enough that my stomach dropped. I clicked the article, skimmed the usual name, last known location, time, what she was wearing. Then I stared at the grainy security footage they attached, a still image of her from behind, walking alone. I don't know why I showed it to him. Maybe I wanted him to say something reassuring. Maybe I wanted to feel silly. He was brushing his teeth when I held up my phone. "Look at this," I said. "Doesn't she look like?" He glanced at the screen, shrugged. "That stuff happens all the time," he said through foam. I waited. He didn't ask her name. Didn't ask where. Didn't ask anything. Just spit into the sink and walked out of the room like I'd shown him a weather report. I stood there holding the phone, trying to shake it off. But I couldn't. Because in that moment, his indifference felt heavier than fear. Like this wasn't news to him. Like this wasn't tragic. Like this was just background noise. He took walks at night, long ones. At first, I thought it was sweet, maybe even healthy. "Just clearing my head," he'd say, grabbing his hoodie, sometimes a thermos of tea. He'd kiss my cheek, leave quietly, and come back calmer, softer. Like he'd reset something I wasn't allowed to see. I never questioned it, not at first, but the girl's face stuck with me, and after a few weeks I started noticing the time. Midnight, 1:07 am, sometimes later. And he never took his phone, said he liked to unplug. One night, I pretended to be asleep. Listened to him move through the apartment, quiet, careful, like a man used to silence. He closed the door softly behind him. I got up, walked to the window, pulled the curtain just enough to watch the street. He didn't take his usual route, not toward the park, not toward the stores, just off into the dark. Gone almost an hour. When he came back, he was flushed, breathing deep but steady. He didn't look surprised to see me awake. "Couldn't sleep," he said, pulling off his hoodie. I nodded, watched him hang it on the back of a chair like he always did. Folded neat like a ritual, he kissed my forehead, said back to bed. And I followed, but I didn't sleep. Because I was starting to wonder what kind of man needs to disappear into the night just to come back gentle. And what he does in the dark that makes him feel like himself again. The drawer was always locked, top left of his desk. Matte black handle, smooth slide, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. And I started looking. He'd sit there some nights, reading articles, writing things I never saw. If I asked what he was working on, he'd say, just organizing files or clearing out old stuff. But that drawer never opened. Once, while he was out getting groceries, I tried, jiggled it lightly. Then a little harder. No give. Inside, I heard a clink. Not paper, metal, something small, something that didn't want to be touched. I crouched down, stared at the keyhole like it might blink back at me. I thought about trying to force it, or pick it, or look for the key. But something in me said no, not because I was afraid of getting caught, but because I was afraid of what I might find. That night, I sat on the couch while he worked at the desk. His fingers moved across the keyboard, fast, controlled. I heard the drawer shift slightly, not open, just the subtle sound of weight inside. I glanced up, he looked back at me and smiled. "You okay?" I nodded, "Yeah, just tired." He got up, came over, pulled me into him like everything was fine, like nothing had ever been locked at all. But now I knew better. Because there's a different kind of silence when someone's hiding something. It doesn't fill a room, it empties it. His sister slipped one night. It was late. We'd stayed at his parents' place longer than planned. Wine flowed too easily, dessert stretched into a second round, and by the time we were leaving, it was too dark to drive. He offered to set up in the guest room. I went to grab a glass of water before bed and heard voices in the hallway, low, sharp, trying not to travel. But sound always travels when people forget to guard it. His sister, his mother. I stopped just before the kitchen and leaned against the wall, quiet. "She doesn't know," his sister whispered. A pause. His mother replied, barely above a breath, "We don't talk about it." Then his sister again, voice tighter. "How can you pretend it didn't happen? What if she ends up like the others?" Silence, nothing after that. Not for a long time. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I thought if I stayed still enough, the truth wouldn't reach me. But it already had. I walked back to the room slowly. Lay in the dark next to him, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might wake him. He was already asleep, or pretending. I watched his chest rise and fall, counted the seconds between each breath, told myself I must have misheard, must have misunderstood. The others didn't mean what I thought it meant. I told myself that, over and over. And still, I barely slept, because even denial has an expiration date. I tried to pretend I misheard. Tried to fold the words into something harmless. Maybe others meant ex-girlfriends, women who hurt him, something benign. I told myself families say weird things, that they hold onto drama, that they use words loosely in hushed tones, but it didn't work. Because the next morning, when we came down for coffee, his sister wouldn't meet my eyes. His mother handed me a mug like nothing had happened, asked how I slept, smiled too wide. And him, he was all warmth and kisses, making jokes, brushing hair from my face, holding my waist like he could anchor me with affection alone. But the second he stepped out of the room, his sister finally looked at me, just for a second. And in her eyes, I saw it, pity, regret, fear, not fear of me, fear for me. That's when it changed. I started watching him differently. The way he moved through a room, how quiet he was when he entered it. The way he watched me closely, but not with love, like a scientist or a collector or someone who already knew the ending. I started watching myself too. What I said, how I said it, where I stood, what I wore. I became careful, measured, because it wasn't just about who he might be anymore. It was about who he already was, and whether or not I was next. I saw the name on a letter. It was a Wednesday, mid-morning. He was in the shower, and I was looking for a pen in his desk drawer, not the locked one, just the others. I wasn't snooping, not then, just existing cautiously. But tucked under a pile of envelopes and manuals, I saw the corner of something different, older paper, folded down at the edge, like it had been opened and closed a dozen times. The address was local. The return label was smudged, but the name printed across the front wasn't Nathan Wells. It was Matthew Cross. The handwriting was his. Same slanted R's, same way he wrote his fours with an open top. I'd seen it on grocery lists, on Post-its. On birthday cards, I stared at it like it might explain everything. Like maybe it belonged to a brother or a cousin or a phase, but I knew better. My hands started sweating. My mouth went dry. I listened to the water running upstairs and waited for it to stop. It didn't, so I took a photo, slid the envelope back exactly how I found it, closed the drawer, and spent the rest of the day trying to make sense of a name I had never heard him speak. Later that night, I asked, "Did you ever think of changing your name?" He didn't look up from his book. "Once," he said, but I didn't. I nodded. He turned a page, and I knew then, whatever name he'd given me, it wasn't his first, and probably not his last. I looked it up under Matthew Cross. It was 2 a.m. He was asleep beside me, breathing slow, one arm over his chest like always. I slipped out of bed and padded into the living room, the soft glow of my laptop lighting my face as I typed the name I couldn't stop hearing in my head. Matthew Cross, enter, at first nothing. A LinkedIn profile with no photo, a defunct Facebook, an old wedding announcement that didn't match. Then buried deeper, an archived local news site from another state. Headline: 4th woman missing in 5 years. No arrests, no leads. I clicked. There wasn't much. The story was dated, the tone clinical. Her name was Ava. She was 24. Vanished walking home from a shift at a bakery. The photo showed her smiling, hair windblown, eyes bright. I scrolled, then froze. A former resident, Matthew Cross, was questioned by police but released due to insufficient evidence. He had lived in the area for 8 months and moved shortly after Ava's disappearance. The case remains unsolved. There was a photo, younger, clean-shaven, different haircut, but the jawline, the eyes, the tilt of the mouth. It was him. I didn't breathe for a full minute. I sat there, frozen, every hair on my body upright. I searched again. Different city, another article, another missing woman, different name, different job, same age range, same soft features. Same man once questioned. And then another, 4 women, 4 towns. Same pattern, same vanishing, no resolution, no arrest, and him always leaving right after. I shut the laptop and sat in the dark. The man I loved had another name, and women went missing wherever he went. It was him. I knew it, not in that vague, gut-feeling way, not in a way I could brush off as coincidence or paranoia. I knew it the way you know when a storm is coming before you hear the thunder, before the sky even turns. It was in the details, the the stories he told, the timelines that never quite lined up, the cities he said he'd just passed through, even though he always remembered the street names. The random references he made to places he claimed not to know well. Like the time he said, that bakery on 5th had amazing peach tarts, when I mentioned Georgia. I hadn't asked how he knew. Now I did. The pieces snapped together in the worst kind of way. And still, I went to bed that night and laid next to him. Still, I kissed him good morning. Still, I smiled, because now it wasn't about knowing. It was about surviving the knowing. I had to stay still long enough to get out safely, to not raise suspicion, to not end up like Ava, like the others. He never said anything, never hinted that he knew I knew, but every time he looked at me, I wondered. Did he see it in my eyes? Did he feel the shift? Did he smell the fear? He held me that night, tighter than usual, and I held my breath, wondering if he always hugged that hard before he let go for good. I said nothing, because saying something meant testing how far he'd go to keep the lie alive, and I already knew how far he'd gone with others. His family knew. That's what made it worse. Worse than the drawer, worse than the name, worse than the women he never mentioned. They knew, his mother with her forced smiles and careful phrasing, his sister with her silent glances and unfinished sentences. He's better now. I replayed those words on a loop. They weren't hopeful. They were fearful. They weren't about healing. They were about containment. I stopped asking questions, stopped making suggestions, stopped offering little pieces of myself like I had for so long. I became quiet. The kind of quiet that studies exits. That calculates walking distances to public places. That memorizes license plates, neighbor routines, which window faces the street. I waited for him to leave for the gym, for groceries, for anything, and every time he did, I checked the drawer, still locked, still humming with whatever truth he kept inside. But I didn't try to open it again. I didn't need to. I had all the confirmation I needed. And so I stayed outwardly calm, inwardly unraveling. Because once you know the person sleeping next to you has destroyed lives before, you don't confront. You perform, you blend. You disappear slowly enough that they don't notice until you're already gone. I played along. Every day became a performance, tight as a wire and just as thin. I woke up next to him, kissed his shoulder, made breakfast, asked about his day like I hadn't read about the last woman he made disappear, laughed at his jokes like I didn't know what he was, touched his face like I hadn't seen it under another name, in another state, beside another woman who never made it home. I became the version of myself he fell for, sweet, predictable, affectionate in all the right ways. I didn't overstep, didn't challenge, didn't suggest vacations or family holidays or anything that might stir up more than he was comfortable giving. When he worked late, I stayed up with a book, eyes scanning the page, brain tracing timelines and street names. When he took his walks, I memorized how long he was gone, started setting a timer, tracked it on my phone. Every moment was measured, because I knew I was running out of time. One wrong reaction, one question said with too much edge, one glance that lingered too long at the drawer. That's all it would take, so I smiled harder, cooked more, asked less, and started building the life I'd flee to, one step at a time, in silence, with a smile, because pretending to love a man you're terrified of is easier than explaining how you survived him. I couldn't even tell my best friend. Not Jess. Not the one who knew every ex, every fight, every offhand comment from a guy that made my skin crawl. Not the one who once offered to drive 5 hours in the rain just to bring me soup and a box of tissues when I had the flu. I tried. I opened our text thread. Typed, "I think Nathan's not who he says he is." Backspaced. Tried again. "Have you ever looked someone in the face and realized they could kill you?" Deleted that too. What could I even say? "I think my boyfriend has a body count and a backup name." She'd panic. Call me, call the cops, show up. And I didn't need panic, I needed precision. So I drafted a message in my notes app instead. Just for me, bullet points. What I'd found, when, where, the screenshots, the newspaper clippings, the dates and cities. If anything happened to me, someone would find it. That was the best I could do. Some nights I'd stare at Jess's name in my contacts, thumb hovering over the call button. But the image always stopped me, her rushing over in a panic, confronting him, asking the wrong question too soon. Getting caught in something meant for me, so I stayed quiet. Because if I didn't, I wouldn't just be risking my own life. I'd be giving him another name to bury. Then one night, he watched me sleep. Not a glance, not a soft smile in the dark. He watched me. I opened my eyes around 3 a.m. Something had pulled me up from whatever shallow sleep I'd managed. At first I didn't see him, just felt something, that sensation you get when someone's staring at the back of your neck. I rolled over. He was sitting upright in bed, not moving, just sitting. His eyes were on me, wide open, not blinking, like he hadn't blinked for minutes. He didn't smile, didn't speak, didn't even look surprised that I'd woken up, just stared. And I laid there, frozen, pulse climbing into my ears. I thought about screaming, about running, about reaching for something, anything. But instead, I closed my eyes, soft, slow, like I hadn't seen it, like I was still asleep, like I was safe, and I didn't open them again for hours. When the sun finally came up, he was gone. The spot in the bed next to me was empty, already cool. I found him in the kitchen, humming, flipping pancakes, like he hadn't spent the night watching me like a decision he hadn't quite made yet. He kissed me on the cheek. Sleep okay? I nodded, he handed me coffee, and I smiled, because now it wasn't about planning my escape. It was about surviving long enough to make it out alive. I packed quietly, only what I could carry. No suitcases, no zippers, just a backpack I'd bought months ago, buried in the back of the closet, tags still on. I'd said it was for weekend trips. That morning, I told him I was visiting family. He smiled like it was a sweet idea. Said, "Give your mom my best," and kissed the top of my head. I nodded, told him I'd be back in a few days. "Don't miss me too much." He laughed, "Not possible." I wanted to throw up. I left mid-morning. Broad daylight, public. Safe, I waved at the neighbors on my way out. Smiled like someone with nothing to hide. Like someone who wasn't abandoning a man I believed had taken lives. My phone was already scrubbed. I'd logged out of every app, disabled location services, switched my number, deleted every cloud backup. Social media gone, photos wiped, email forwarded to an account I never used, cash in my wallet. Rental car under a different name. I drove with the windows down so I could hear if anyone followed. I didn't cry, didn't feel relief, just silence. The kind of silence that sits in your chest like a held breath, waiting to see if you got out in time. I drove 6 hours, changed motels twice, slept in my clothes, and when I finally crossed the state line into somewhere he'd never been, under a name he'd never touched, only then did I let myself sleep, light, with the chair against the door and the backpack still zipped by my feet. I changed my name, not legally, not yet, but in every way that counted. New town, new job, new routine built on caution and gut instinct. The kind of living that doesn't feel like living, just staying alive. I picked a name that didn't sound like me, picked clothes I wouldn't have worn 6 months ago, cut my hair, took the first apartment I could find with 2 locks and a second-floor unit, started over. People here think I'm quiet, that I moved after a breakup, that I'm healing. And maybe I am, but healing doesn't look the way people think. It's sleeping in 10-minute stretches. It's checking locks 3 times before bed. It's flinching when footsteps pass your door at night. It's watching the same man on the street twice in one day and convincing yourself it's coincidence, then packing a go bag just in case it's not. It's staring at the ceiling and whispering, "I got out. I got out. I got out," even when part of you still feels like he's behind you. There's no guidebook for disappearing. No checklist for erasing someone else's fingerprints from your skin. But I'm doing it, day by day, choice by choice. And no one here knows my real name. No one here knows I used to love a man with a drawer full of secrets and a history that swallowed women whole. They just see me. Quiet, alone. Rebuilding something no one realizes was ever shattered. The news broke again. I was folding laundry, something quiet playing in the background, news on low volume, more for company than interest. Then I heard the words that made my blood stop moving. 27-year-old Emma Blake was last seen. I turned slow, there it was, her face. Brunette, soft features, wide, unsure smile, missing again. My hands were frozen in the fabric of a t-shirt I didn't remember buying. I stared at the screen like I could will it to be wrong. But I knew the pattern, knew the look. Knew the town, just 2 counties over from one he used to mention in passing. Emma worked part-time at a bookstore, volunteered on weekends. Last seen walking alone after her shift. I whispered it, no, but it didn't change the screen. It didn't change the sick, rising certainty in my stomach. Because I'd seen her before, not her specifically, but women like her. Women he gravitated to, women who carried softness like a vulnerability, women he made feel special, then small, then gone. He'd found someone else. And this time, she wouldn't get a warning, wouldn't see the drawer, wouldn't hear the whispers in the hallway or notice the shift in his breath at night. She wouldn't get the chance to wonder if he was who he said he was. She'd just disappear. And I'd be the one watching it happen. Again, I blame myself. I should have said something. The guilt doesn't scream, it whispers. Constant, low, steady. It follows me through the grocery store, through showers, through moments that used to feel normal. I write letters I never send. One to the police, typed and retyped, outlining everything I found. But I delete it every time. No proof, no witness. Just dots I connected too late. One to Emma's family. I don't know her parents' names, don't know where they live. But I write anyway. I'm sorry, I should have stopped him. I should have warned someone. I should have believed the version of myself who knew earlier. The one who stayed too long because she thought love would win. Then there's the one I write to him. That one I don't type. I write it by hand. You fooled me. You let me sleep beside you while others never woke up. You watched me with that stillness, that wait, like you were wondering if I was next or already yours. I hope someday you sit in a room with nothing but your own echo and feel the way I did every night I didn't run. I hope you know you were never good at hiding. I was just too in love to see you clearly. I fold the letter, burn it in the sink. Watch the edges curl, turn black, and vanish down the drain. But the guilt stays, because I wasn't the first. And I wasn't the last. And every woman after me walks with my silence stitched into her story. I sleep light, always. Even now, months gone, new name, new place, my body hasn't forgotten. I never sleep with both earbuds in. Never wear socks to bed. Never lock the window unless I've tested it twice. I know every creak in the floorboards. I place a glass on the doorknob most nights, not for security, for sound. My dreams don't scream, they whisper. A drawer clicking shut, footsteps in carpet. A voice I once loved saying, "You okay?" in the dark, and in those dreams I never answer. Because I know if I speak, I won't wake up. I shop early when the stores are quiet. I park where I can see the exit. I never let anyone walk behind me longer than a few seconds without stepping aside. I change routines. I carry things with weight. I trust almost no one. And still, sometimes, in the middle of something simple, it catches me. Today it was the cereal aisle. A man brushed past me, too close, not touching, just near. And before I could stop myself, I spun, fast, heart thudding, hands clenched. He looked startled, stepped back, apologized. I nodded, whispered, "It's fine." But it wasn't. It never really is. Because peace doesn't come with distance. Not when you carry the weight of knowing. Not when your silence built the space for someone else's scream. I walked out of the store without what I came for. Because once you've survived something like him, every aisle feels like a warning. And sleep. Sleep is just another hallway you learn to tiptoe through. Thank you for watching. Please do not forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I love you all.